Okay.
Here we are. It's Saturday, May 13th, and this is the Tinderbox Meetup. I'm Mark Bernstein, the developer of Tinderbox, and here is Michael Becker.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the meetup. For those that aren't here, the typical format is we go around the room and we have new people introduce themselves. We don't have any up there today. We then go through and talk about what projects we're working on, and then and address any theme we might have. So small group today, we all know each other, so we can just dig right into what projects are we working on. So and we can and prior to starting the recording, we were just going through an interesting parser discussion, which I'll want to revisit so we get that recorded and people in the community can know what we're talking about. So we might start there, but before we do that, does anybody have any comments, thoughts, ideas, questions, stuff they're working on? And if not, at the end, I can show you a really cool doing social media and Tinderbox demo. And it's not really a demo. It's something I use every single day, all day, constantly. So I will be happily demonstrate that. But before we jump into that, and who's got what? Melvin, what are you working on?
I'm always working on trying to fit Tinderbox into my workflow, and I posted that little suggestion about maybe having a session with the folks over at the Brain, and just to explore what the possibilities are of the interaction between Tinderbox and the Brain, which is getting increasingly sophisticated each time it comes out with a new version. So
yeah, I reached out to him, by the way, the CEO. I don't know him, but if anybody knows him or can make that connection for me, please put him in touch with me and we'll get him scheduled one weekend. I think that'd be a fun dialogue.
Well, Mark Bernstein, you mentioned you must have heard, was it Jerry Mikulski? Has he made a presentation that you were familiar with?
Yeah, I've met Mikulski several times. I met the guy who did the Brain 15 years ago, maybe longer. We didn't really hit it off all that well, but but they may be completely different people at this point because the Brain has gone through several iterations of what it was trying to be.
It's on version 13 now, and a guy that Harlan Yu is the person who I guess created it, and is probably the person you're referring to. But this Jerry Mikulski seems to be the number one user. I think he claims to have 1 million different entries in his Brain. So it's
can you drop his contact info again in the chat, and I'll try to chase him down. I think that'd be a really fun discussion.
I was in contact, but I told them you'd be in touch with them. So if you want me to go further, I can, and I could.
Yeah, give him my email address. But also too, if you can give me
Okay.
tell me how to contact them, and I mean, I could probably figure it out. But if you already know how to get a hold of them,
well, the Mikulski has his email and his contact information up at his site. We gave you the link for that in that thread.
all right. Well, I've been busy, so if you can drop it in the chat for me, and I'll track it down.
Okay, because he might be the more interesting person to talk to.
No, I agree. We want to talk
of how to use it.
No offense, Mark. We want to talk to users more than developers. So I'm joking, but yeah. So Mr. Paul,
We'll do so.
Thank you for that.
Just wanted to add some context. I started using the Brain when it was Personal Brain back in 1999, and there was nothing else like it. And I was associated with the Intel community, and it was very heavy there. And then, for about 15 years, there were no competitors. I mean, its Plex was unique. And what it did was really sharp. And then there were competitors. And in the world of competitors, whether they are, Obsidian or Tinderbox or anything else, the Brain in its forum, because I'm still dipping there, it's fairly active, they pretty much closed ranks around a closed product. They have resisted any entreaties about an API link. They don't want to change the attributes in a note. You know, their note consists of 2 attributes. You can have a type and a tag. Everything else is intrinsic or part of the background. And they spend a lot of time on the look and feel of the markdown in a note and the web presence, as opposed to what the thoughts can do other than being linked to a child note or a side note. I'm just kind of riffing here to say, I've watched them. They do not want to link with other products. They want to pull the world into their products logically because they're making money off of it. So it'd be interesting to see if Harlan actually is curious to talk with us.
Yeah, and you said something yesterday too about, and I don't remember your quote. We recorded it, but it was this idea that you use Tinderbox, to think, and and don't let all the other stuff get in the way. Something to that effect. It was really insightful, but I can't remember the exact words you used.
Well, it was actually just cribbing off of Mark Anderson's comment in the forum, where he said, there's a lot of things out there that create an attractive, really pleasant and seemingly useful UI experience, and they force you into using the product in the mold of their UI. And the thing that I'm discovering and appreciating about Tinderbox is it forces you to think about your notes and their connections and their structure, and the UI is not really important. And I think when you get to a certain level of managing your thoughts and you're building a second brain, which is my focus these days, you really want the interface to get out of the way, and you want to be looking at the notes and their connections and their attributes.
Well, and on that note, what I really love about Tinderbox is, to that point, I think Mark's done a really good job, almost too good of a job to do just that, to get the interface out of the way, and you only turn on the defaults when they're helpful for you. Whereas something like a Word or Excel throws it all in your face, which basically tells you this is the way it's supposed to be done. Whereas
Right.
Mark says, here's a toolkit, do it however you want, and I have learned, I had the crutch in the beginning, being really irritated that it wasn't doing what I want, until I learned the power of being able to make my own choices. And so I now prefer the latter in the Tinderbox way. So that's my sense on that. I don't know if anybody else has any similar observations as Paul.
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit. Yeah, so I checked out the brain last night. It loaded it. It's just a mind mapping tool, advanced mind mapping tool that Tinderbox definitely easily does. Actually, according to Harlan, it's a desktop replacement. Actually, initially when it was created, so the tooling very sophisticated. I think it's really cool application. But Tinderbox, I think, is it doesn't even scratch what Tinderbox can do. But it's kind of a cool application, the brain.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a desktop replacement. That was the purpose of the creation of it.
Got it.
Yeah, I could just a brief share here. This is my brain from my primary topic, and again, that's why I'm looking more and more for Tinderbox. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's. Now, how do I straighten that all out?
Yeah, pretty,
it's about 20,000 different references that are focused in on my primary topic, which is accountability. So, and that's why, again, I would like to explore that. I don't know whether there's really a solution, but that's how I use it.
Yeah, I mean, my challenge when using the brain was getting it out. I mean, that's one of the things what I like so much about Tinderbox is it's not, to Paul's point, it's not locked. Your stuff's not locked. You can get it in, you can get it out, you can move it around, you can do with anything you want. And the software is not in the way of me doing with what I want with my data. And I appreciate that.
I think an interesting sort of, this is referencing something on the point that's been brought up. One of the things I find myself looking at when inevitably a new question comes up, is a sense of, well, how do I work with Tinderbox and knowledge app X? And the things that was really hard to work out is the question being asked because the person who asked it is used to using app X and wants to know how to do something in Tinderbox or vice versa, or wants to make Tinderbox work in a way that they're used to using because they're used to using it? Or are they trying to connect two apps because they actually have quite nuanced and different things? Because the most powerful thing is to use the different tools, because the different ones do specific things that you can't do somewhere else. Because often I think we fall down a rabbit hole where we're basically trying to, play one tune to tune of another, one song to the tune of another. To no great benefit apart from an awful lot of head scratching and ending up thinking, well, why isn't this like that, when they don't need to be and they were never designed to be, although they're doing ostensibly the same thing. So the hard part often is to see, okay, well, most of these things aren't better or worse, but they're usefully different in cases. And I think the most useful thing to the community as a whole is knowing why we might want to use particular app, because actually it does a particular thing that, if you need it, is really useful. Whether you do more work in that app or less work in another app is really down to personal choice, and where your head's at. Some people clearly very, very much like writing in the sort of semi-style markdown that's become quite voguish, which I think has mainly come across from programming IDEs. I think that's where it all started. And of course, if you're used to looking at code all day, looking at Markdown looks sort of codey, and I can sort of see how it becomes a natural progression. I'm not sure it's natural to all the people who aren't coders by things, but if that's how the app works, and that's the only way it works, that's what you go with. But I sort of mentioned this in the way these things become norms quite undeliberately, and no one pauses to consider why we did this and whether it was even useful, because suddenly it becomes a thing of, well, you have to do it this way because this is the way it's done. And I found myself thinking, no, we don't. We might choose to do so, but it's useful to know why we're choosing to do it, rather than because, in a sense of being forced to do so.
Yeah. So, again, Word teaches you to write a document in this way. So you think that's the way a document's supposed to be written. And then you realize, well, maybe not, and yeah, interesting. Kim, you had your hand up or finger up for a while. Did you
the point I just mentioned with the brain, that it's cool application, just a mind mapping tool. I have Mind Manager that does the same thing. Tinderbox I think the challenge with Tinderbox is to figure out what you want to do with it and ask the questions and get into those massive tooling with Tinderbox. But I thought the brain was kind of cool. Definitely get you started, get your creative side started. But I don't know. I think Tinderbox has a beat hands down. Not to say it's in competition at all, but yeah, it's just a desktop replacement. It was kind of cool. I never heard of the brain before, but I'd rather stick to Tinderbox. I think that's a more advanced tool. I think it's a little bit more of a learning curve, of course, with Tinderbox, but you get what you put into it, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of competition, actually. I think it's a matter of how do you fit these things together. Tinderbox, I following along as I have over the past year or so, I know that there's a solution to my issue about how to bring all these things together, but I really think it should be. I also use Devon Think, and this is all coming out of bookends as well. So it's a matter of the drawing it all together, and I think Tinderbox is my solution there. But this is more of the collection, and I think the Tinderbox will allow me to do more of the curating if I ever really get a hold of it. So.
Well, let's work on getting a hold of it. We've got some ideas there, and we'll give you some thoughts on that. Anybody else have any other comments, questions, thoughts, ideas? We can start playing with the tool a little bit this morning.
I've got one other quick one in terms of, think of the last comment, useful thing where I think Tinderbox is quite useful. Again, it's not everyone's need, but one of the things I do find it very useful is doing sort of lightweight quantitative work. So you've taken in a whole ream of information. I mean, I've literally just done this in the last couple of weeks, starting new projects. I've now, 600-700 notes, several thousand links, which I now need to sort of get back over. But one thing I've been able to do quite quickly is to start getting sort of some counts to give me some idea of how big some of the tasks are that I've got to now do in the review. And that's, you know, that's actually quite easy to do with a very small amount of action code and done quite quickly. So it's one of those sort of useful things. If you need to do it, it's there, and you might not know to do it. So, you know, if you start looking at things like there are attributes that report the number of links of different kinds and that sort of thing. And since and also since I mean, action code has improved, well, increased, should I say, in its complexity a lot, or range of a function, certainly sort of from about 9 onwards. And you can do things now that you can actually step through all the attributes of a note. Sorry, well, you can set the attributes, but I meant to say the links of a note, and you can see sort of how many links of what type it's got. And if you're doing, you know, if you're doing things where you're doing multiple iterative passes over a large number of notes, it can be quite useful to get your sort of hands on rough counts and things. If you're making single deliberate notes almost one at a time, that sort of thing is of no use, and it doesn't matter. So you don't need to use it. But anyway, mention it for what it's worth.
So let's just give people an example of that. And we've done this, we've gone over this before in previous weeks, but as you all know, I'm working on an event. It's on May 20th, 25th in London. And one of the things that I wanted to do once I got all of my speakers figured out. So right now I've got 41 confirmed speakers. I know their titles and their seniorities and all of that. But one of the areas I wanted to do was let's calculate and quantify the elements. So I created some action code, and it pops up, and what that action code does for me is this. And it says, okay, I've got 31 that are in the identified bucket, and I've got different quotes, and all of these statistics are all being automatically calculated by just interrogating the notes. And that's super pretty easy to do. And just to let you see what that looks like, go to stamps, go here. And this one's kind of a kludge, because I know what it needs to be there, but where is that? Here you go. And again, this looks complicated, but it's really not. I'm just asking it to go down and collect all of the different types of things that I want to calculate, and then I have it go and calculate those those statistics and numbers for me. So it's really a useful thing, as Mark Anderson was just suggesting. All right, Mr. Peter.
Yeah, I was wondering, is anyone using Tinderbox as a CRM? And if so, how did you approach it?
Absolutely. 100%. And I'll show you an example of that. So in the context of like working with my events, so I have all these different speakers that I've invited, but I don't want, and this individual, say Michael Becker, the one I've just selected, you'll see here in my event, he's showing up in 3 different places. So I don't want 3 different Michael Beckers in my Tinderbox file. So what I do is I've created a action code where if I type in the word Michael Becker here, Tinderbox will automatically go and create that person, Michael Becker. And this is an agent, so I can go to the actually go down to my speakers, and I'll show you there. So here's my run a show. So you'll see down here, if I'm doing a session for this event, there's the person Michael Becker, and I put in his name up. Where is Michael Becker? Here. And what that does is Tinderbox will automatically create a note for me for that individual Michael Becker. And so if I jump to that, here is that note, Michael Becker. So in my people folder, and I don't have the count, but let's see right now in this particular file, I got child count. I have 479 people that I'm currently tracking in this particular Tinderbox file. And you'll see that, I've got the title, I've got the normalized seniority, their organization, their address, email address, a picture or photo. And then you'll see all of the different sessions and issue and things that this person is related to within that file. And so my goal is to have that atomic note of one person. Then and so with that, this person's title, their information, their bio. You'll see here I've got their bio, and there's different ways and roles, methodologies that I use there. So one thing I have been playing with lately too is if I add this, you'll see that I have Tinderbox automatically adding a note update. So I can say, here's some notes on keeping track of that particular person. That's one way I'm doing it. The other thing I've done here is I've got another note. I don't know if I have it in this file. I can show it to you in a minute. If I don't, I can add it in really quick. Yeah, here you go. So the other way I do it is I've got a note called role. And what the note called role does is, you'll see here, I can say, you know, he also is the PD&I working group chair for the, well, and Mark, this is that getting kicked out of the attribute thing that I'm trying to figure out how to track down.
Yeah, it's a rule, and it's a rule that's forcing a screen refresh. And but in something this complicated, it's going to be a challenge to figure out what rule is involved.
Yeah, no, I understand. So you'll see here then. So what I've also realized is, so on, and again, I have varying levels of development here, but I've created a prototype for myself called Role. And so one of his roles is chair of PD&I working group for the mobile ecosystem forum. Another one of his roles it would be, and I'm talking about myself in third person, which is kind of funny, but why not? Another one of my roles would be, you know, adjunct professor at Cal Poly. Right. And so that way I can now track all of the different roles that individual has. I can then roll those roles up into an attribute, which I do. And you'll notice how these roles are automatically getting linked to Michael Becker. And so I now can keep track of all of the different roles that this individual has, when they started those jobs, when do they leave those jobs, what do they do? I mean, and again, this just goes down to how much work I want to put into it and where it's valuable for me. So like when I work with my students, I'll often find my students are both the student in my class, but they also have an outside job and they also have other interests. So I keep track of it in that way. So that's another way I go about doing that. Now, I'll then have, and I've been toying with this idea that, you know, this is the primary role, right? And then that primary role with action code could roll up and become and I'm not in this file, I'm not necessarily doing it, become the organization and become the title of that particular person or note. So that's one way to do it. Now, the other nice thing about doing that, then, if I roll back up here to the speakers, what you'll see I have happening here, where's Michael Becker? Right here. So what you'll see happening here is when and I'll just do a new note. Let's say I'm adding a new speaker to this event. Okay, test. So I've got this new generic speaker. If I want to have Michael Becker be part of this event, come on. All I need to do is now type his name, select it, and then what action code is going to do is it's going to pull the requisite information for Michael Becker into this note. And so you'll now see is pulling in his country, his address, his titles, his normalization, and then that allows me to then create a note about him. So it's a really nice, effective way of managing and leveraging Tinderbox as kind of that rudimentary CRM tool. And then what I do is once I've curated that, I'll then pull the information that I need here into a more professionalized CRM like a HubSpot or something like that if I need to. But one thing I've been doing, which I actually found was particularly cool, and I figured out how to do this last night, is, let me show, here you go. This is a great example. So for my event last night, and thinking about it in the context of CRM, so I have my notes, Michael Becker, blah, 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 speaker, Randy Warshaw, Soren Shaft. I've got all these individuals. They're both speakers in other contexts, but in this context, for my event, we have been invited by the press to basically give quotes to the press for my particular event. And so what I figured out last night, which was really cool, is I created a template called press comment. And this basically says, hi, first name. I can't wait to see you in 13 days. Great news. Our event's coming. We did a press release and press is interested in our event. Here's the press inquiry. Here's the request. This is what I need from you. Can you provide 400 words? And then from a CRM perspective, what I did is I ran an agent that says, go find all of the notes whose person agent. So in other words, what I'm saying here is in the attribute person, go find the notes whose name is Inez, whose name is John Bruner, whose name is Michael Becker, and then serve them up. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, hey, Tinderbox, go find me those people that I want to have that I want to invite to be part of the to give us one of those 500-word press requests. Now watch what happens here, and this is what's really wickedly cool. What I've done is in an action script, I said, here's the template I want associated when I want to reach out to that person. Here's the subject of my outreach that I want with that person. And now watch what happens. If I click Michael Becker's name and I hit some hotkey on my computer, I've got it set up that triggers an Apple script that then pops up an email, and it automatically pre-populates the email. Hey, first name, blah, 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 do this. And now I can just hit send and email the person.
That is super impressive.
And so that's how I'm doing it. And then if I want speaker quotes, if I want press invites, if I want, here's another example. And for this one, I've got a VIP session that I'm going with somebody. So now I'm inviting Fraser to the VIP session, do the same thing. Now that methodology is going to change the output template. Just give it a second. Oops, hang on. Sometimes it needs to be done twice. All right, that one is not working. Maybe I mucked up with the template. Let's see. Right, Darwin. All right. Oh, I see what's missing. It's telling me something's wrong. Oh yeah, okay. I messed something up with the action code, but you get the idea. So it's actually doing what I'm telling it to do. I messed up the script for where the template's going to be on that particular one. But so that's how I'm using it as a CRM, and it's just wickedly efficient. Thoughts, comments, reactions?
Well, by the
Yeah,
way,
this is such a great way. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I remember ages ago, maybe like back in the Tinderbox 5 era, Tinderbox was able to access email mailboxes and have its own email account that could pull in content from. Is that functionality still part of the product, or did it go away when we had a couple major upgrades a while back?
No idea.
Because I remember
I'm muted
point...
somehow. Okay, I think I'm back. That was done around Tinderbox 3 or 4 and lasted for a few years, but it was never particularly popular. And well, it didn't make it into Tinderbox 6 because when we changed the framework, the email framework we were using was built into the old MetroWorks world, and Apple's never really supported that.
All right. Okay. Peter, does that help in giving you some ideas on using it as a CRM?
Oh, yeah, that's really invaluable.
Okay.
I tell you, and Peter Wasoko never ceases to be impressed by Michael Becker's work.
And believe me, it's all out of self-preservation of how can I get this stuff done as fast as possible, given everything that I've got going on. And what I found is when it's all in one place, it makes it really easy, and that's the power of Tinderbox, is getting your second brain into relatively one place. I tend to have now do most of my work in about 4 Tinderbox files at any given time. And then really at any given time, I'm really only using about 2. but it's just coming together really well. So that's how that those are some ideas there.
I can show one more. I thought, you know, in terms of sort of showing stuff happening. In fact, I'm still working on it, but I thought I could show an example of. Let me just share a second. So this is, oops, not that one. This is some data collection I'm doing at the moment. It's mostly around ontologies, vocabularies, all sorts of metadata stuff. But for a lot of these, let me pick actually the better one here, I'm basically finding a resource, finding a bit about it, a couple of URLs, if it's actually got some sort of an API or a specification I can get at. So there's lots of this. And what I wanted to do was go through and find out how many of these I had. And I found that, well, I've got about 635 notes now, and URL count of about 1,400, which seemed high. And then I realized that because I created a lot of these via drag drop, what was actually happening, let me pick an example that shows it. So quite often, that's due to the fact that when I've dragged something in, Tinderbox helpfully recalls where I dragged it from. And actually not in this case, but often this ends up, well, actually I put that in manually, but when it's dropped in the first time, was when I haven't altered, I'm getting, here we go. So there's a URL stored in URL, and it's also helpfully put into text. And it can be useful to have them in both cases, not least because if you don't have displayed attributes on, you won't see it. So one of the things, it's part done at the moment, is I thought, okay, what I can do is go through with the links. So to get the links, to get the count that this one of 1408, I had an agent. I've just emptied the agent out simply because I don't want lots of aliases getting in the way of other counts. But the next task I'm going to do is to go through all the items, look at the number one link in text. If it's the same as the value of URL, then I'll drop that out of the count, and this will probably take that figure of 1,400, you know, down to, I'm guessing, around 800 or something. But I just mentioned that as a way that, you know, you can start and do the rough count, which what I did. I knew it was too high, and because we can now look at all the aspects of an attribute using the each link function, I can go through and I can say, aha, if I look at the value of URL, that is going to be the URL that's either shown on screen in text or is the target of a web link in text. And I can compare that to the value of $URL. And if they're the same, then I know I've got a duplicate and I've got an overcount. Anyway, that's just a little useful wrinkle. And I don't know if I showed folk this. I was looking for a way to clear up a sort of a grid so I could see things. And so the clear up methods at the moment that we have are normally grid-like. And I stole some code that Mark wrote ages ago to make a specimen clock. And I'm going to tidy it up a bit, and I'll post that probably in the forum for people. But it's quite useful. It works in a map. It basically just lays them out in a circle. And in this case, what I've done is I've turned off the link labels. I've given different types of links a different color, and I have set them to be linear rather than curved. And it just gives me a quick tellback of, you basically can see that on the left, there's some notes there that are clearly far more interlinked with others than you know, some of the others in that group. And again, for doing initial triage and trying to work out the interrelation of some of the data you're getting to, this sort of thing can be quite useful. And it's only a bit of code that's making the circle. I say only a bit of code, but once you have that code, it's really easy to implement. And I'll share that in the forum with people.
Perfect. All right, let me take back control here, and I'll show you guys a couple other things. So I fixed my problem when I was showing that error. So the problem is I had the path to the invitation note wrong. So I updated that path. You now can see what I do here. So for this one, if I hit my hotkey there, it gives me that version of that email. And then if I go to the other version of the template and now I hit my hotkeys, I can now get that email. So again, you can see really, really effective way of swapping back and forth between emails and leveraging your capabilities and all that. I just think it's wickedly cool. I don't know. I enjoy myself. Okay. The other thing is let's capture this before we leave it while I still have control here is we were talking about this. So Paul Christie and I were working yesterday, and Paul, maybe when we're done, you can pop up your screen and demonstrate what we were doing yesterday with your file in my Patreon session. But what we uncovered was we were creating a function that was trying to basically change the displayed attribute or displayed expression of a note. And you'll see here we're saying off : space and the name. And you'll notice that it doesn't say off. And if we remove the colon and we go here, you'll see that off appears in the display expression. So what we've uncovered in the preamble to today's meeting is the parser that Tinderbox is using to evaluate display expression. And if we open this up, we go here and look at, so the parser that Tinderbox is using to evaluate this display expression is seeing this colon and is trying to evaluate the colon as part of the parser function. And so what we need to do is we need to tell Tinderbox, no, this is actually a string. And so to do that is we put quotes, because we want that quote here, we put quotes around it, and you'll notice now the colon shows up. So what we originally were thinking might be a bug was actually our not understanding in the moment of the throes of the creative moment that what was happening behind the scenes, and now that Mark Bernstein kind of keyed us in on that, the word expression this is an expression, so therefore Tinderbox is going to try to parse it, and if it's not working, there are certain characters in computing that gets parsed, colon, semicolons, things like that are relevant, and so therefore you want to be assisting the app by telling it really what you want. And so by us offsetting this off colon with quotes, we're telling Tinderbox this is a string, so just parse this string and then add the name.
This is quite an old chestnut, and another way you can think of it is that what you're looking at in the box you've got on screen there is the contents of the string value of $display expression.
Yeah.
So when you're writing it in code, you're actually writing, whether you need single or double quotes, as long as they're balanced, it's fine. You may need to have single at the outside because you're using double quotes in the action. But when you are setting the value of display expression in code, you're setting a string. Although what you're looking at on screen is the contents of the string. So if you imagine that box there as having a quote at either end, when you write it in the code as you were, that's what's happening, and that's where the confusion.
And that's right here, right? That quote and that
exactly, and because you didn't do that, obviously that gave the parser a bit of a head scratcher as to exactly what you meant. When it sees that, so, okay, take everything in here, treat it as the expression, and it's happy.
Right. So when I remove that, the parser is now looking off colon this, and it's seeing the colon as some instruction or some thing that it's triggering off of. And so,
well, it isn't. It isn't in the box. It is in the code.
Yes,
right?
Michael. If you look at this display expression, suppose you change the name of the note.
Okay. And then if I go back and put those things back in like
that. About that. Okay. Sorry. You're running this continuously.
Yeah.
If this had only run once, if you'd only run this once.
Okay, let's do that. So we'll say rule off. How do you turn the rule off? Just the rule, right? So we can say.
Well, you can tick it at the bottom. If you move your inspector up, there's a tick box.
Let's just go like that. Equals false. Rule disabled.
Another one on the other side. It's
right. So now we've turned it off.
Tape over the winter to stop it from rusting.
Sorry, somebody speaking?
Yeah. Forget it. I was just wrong.
Okay. No worries. Okay, so I just thought that was kind of, since we were getting into the bowels of processing and all of that, I found that kind of just an interesting thing that someone might trip along at some way, and Tinderbox is not broken. It's doing exactly what you're telling it to do. It's just helpful to understand how the parsers work and what those methods are. Paul, does that make sense based on what we were doing yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'm watching you do real time here is just an application of the general concept that Tinderbox rewards exploration of the depth of the program by giving you better insight to your notes and what you put in them. A lot of other programs take you down, I'll call them rat holes of learning a function, and you don't know anything more about your information, but you know a lot more about the capabilities of the program. So I appreciate that about Tinderbox, and that's what I've tried to do in what I've been working on with Michael.
Well, what I really like about it too is people like, why do you spend so much time in Tinderbox? And I'm like, you're and some people have even said, you're wasting your time dedicating yourself to this app. And I'm like, well, actually not, because Tinderbox is like I'll call it my computer crack. It's my onboarding into understanding computing, regex, HTML, CSS, parsing languages, I'm starting to learn a little bit about Python. It's like this playground to learn about all things computing. And oh, by the way, I get better at using Tinderbox too. And so I just think it's just got this unbelievably nice balance that I've not found in any other app or experience. I don't know if I think, Paul, that's kind of another way of saying what you were just referring to.
Absolutely. There's a fellow out on YouTube. He's a young fellow, and he publishes YouTube videos on, he calls it procrastination, and it's really pointed because he's highlighted the fact from various forums that people spend a huge amount of time on PKM apps, learning the functions and learning how to figure out how to do a different way of markdown, and they're not spending a lot of time on actually developing insight. And so his recommendation, and this really hit me like a ton of bricks, but it shouldn't have, is stop all the procrastination and features and just use one application for 6 months to do everything you want to do.
And reduce complexity, right? Exactly.
That will generate a huge amount of insight.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, do you want to show, let's, Peter, you have a question, and then we can have Paul share with us what he learned yesterday.
Sorry about that, talking while muted. Always happens. Going back to the CRM case, how would you model organizations that are joint projects of other organizations? I've had a couple of cases where you'll have something where, maybe two corporations are working on a joint project, and within one of the corporations, there might be two separate departments that are also participating in it. So you're dealing with a group that's a child of a couple pieces within one entity and some other partnership entity.
So let me tell you how I do that. And we've kind of gone through this before, but that's okay. So let's tease apart what you just said, right? And the way I think about that is there's the primary element is project. And let's just do it in outline order because it's faster. So we'll call like project A. And project B. Okay, so let's say we have a couple of projects, and then down here we have our resources folder. And let's say, and again, I'm using my verbiage and my constructs. These are not right. This is just the language I've used. So I call it entities folder. And then I have people folder. So the idea that I came up with, what worked for me was, and what I heard you say, tell me if I'm right or wrong, and that you have multiple projects, and these multiple projects may have multiple companies associated with them and may have multiple people associated with them.
Exactly.
And when and just kind of and to kind of give you some error of my ways, so at one point I had like entity Acme, and then I had entity, I don't know, blah blah, right? And for the longest time I screwed around with putting the person here like Michael Becker, right? Because and this is why I came up with this whole concept of having roles. Is I started realizing, well, Michael Becker's not just part of Acme. He's also part of Mobile Ecosystem Forum and Cal Poly and this and that and that. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Michael Becker is actually this atomic note that belongs here that then links to these other companies. So that's where I started getting this mental ability to start abstracting out. There are people, there are companies, there are projects. They all link and relate with each other. And then the glory of Tinderbox, and let me see if we can do this quickly without embarrassing myself too much. Let's say I go down and I go to hints, and while we're at it, let's create a prototype people. So we've got people, and let's create another prototype really quick. We'll call this one P entity, and we'll call this one P project. And we're just going to do this super fast because we don't want to take up too much time. People can ask me to stop if they want. So I'm going to create, as you noticed earlier, I had that attribute called person. The reason why I started trying to use the attribute people, but Tinderbox has a system attribute already called people, and it's a string. And I needed an attribute, a set attribute. So I called it person. Again, you can call it anything you want. So I have an attribute called person. And just so we can visually see the distinctions between there, let's have the project badge be the little icon. So here we have our projects. And just for fun, we'll say, well, a little on ad here. And we're going to say, I don't want to make this too complicated, but prototype equals person. And we can copy that, go over here and drop our on ad here. Spell it right. Go like that. And we'll say P entity. Okay. So we've got, and we might as well, while we're at it, let's just make this and we'll say that's our entities folder. So we can see here's some entities. Okay. So you can just see like visually how this helps. Now, let's say you're working on this project and you've got, in project A, you have Michael Becker and you have Peter Wasilko. And down here, you've got, and here's a really interesting thing just to for people to be aware of. Now, because I've populated the attribute person with these names, when you go and look at that attribute person and in the other note, because every note is associated with every attribute and the values associated with that attribute, I can now select Peter Wasilko from here if I want to add Peter Wasilko to that project. And I can also say Mark Anderson and Art Kerr are on this project too. So now what we've got is a person associated with these projects. And let's say, and I'll get to something in just a minute. Now let's go ahead and let's add to a library that will say, for lack of creativity, create person, and we'll say function, and we'll say create person, and we're going to pass in and no, we don't need to do that. So let's just make it easy. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a function on the fly, and we're going to say, let's say for attribute person dot each x, we want to, and let's create a value here. We'll say variable string vpath equals, and let's hard code it for now, but it's going to be resources folder. Anybody catch any typos on me, please? People folder. Okay. All right, so that's our path. And then we've got to have another string called vNote. And we'll come back to that in a minute. And we're going to say for 2, 3 vNote equals X. And then we're going to say create. No, sorry. vNote equals vPath plus X. We're now going to say, please create me vNote. Okay, so essentially, if I did this right, what I'm asking Tinderbox to do is for every value in the person attribute of a particular note, what I want you to do is go and interrogate each of the individual items and then create that note in this path. All right, let's see if I did it right. I might not have, and we'll fix it if I didn't. So we're going to go up to our project folders now, and we're going to say, add that as a rule. And look, it automatically created Michael Becker, Peter Wasilko, Art Kerman. All right. Now, what we can also do is let's go back to our note here. And what we now want to say is say link to and here's where we may want to be passing a value. So if we go,
when you create a note, it passes you back the path of that note. So if you make something equal to the create, then that's the path that you'll have to the new note that you want to link to.
Yeah, well, so what I want to do is I want to link Michael Becker automatically to project A. So in order to do that, I need to capture the value of project A first. Right? So if I do this and I say variable string, and for lack of creativity, I'll just say v orig note equals name. And then I want to say link to name. Does that work? All right, let's see. Oops. I'm not sure if that's going to work. Let's double check. Let's just delete those and have them recreate. No, okay, that didn't work. So how do I link? Oh, I know. Link vNote. That work? To name? Yeah, there you go. So what I'm saying is I've created vNote. Now I'm saying link vNote to the name, and name is coming from project A. So now if I look at Michael Becker, opens up, you'll see that Michael Becker is linked to project A. And you'll see that Peter Wasilko is linked to project A and to project B. And then this is where it gets really kind of fun. So then we can say, Michael Becker is linked to Acme. And again, we can automate this stuff later. Okay, and then because organization is already a user-generated attribute, what we want to do is create a new attribute for our projects called entity. Okay, and by the way, Mr. Eddie's still with us, I believe. Yes. All right. So David's really into words. So I could call this entities. But what I found over time was I kept getting myself really confused. Did I pluralize that or did I not pluralize that? So for me, just to protect myself from me, all of my attributes are not plurals. They're all singles. Even if even because I know they're set, so by definition they're going to be a plural. So entity is entities in my mind. So I call this entities. I'm going to make a set. Okay. And so then what we can do is we can then say we'll create a new. Actually, here's another interesting. We can change the name of this. This is what we learned with Paul yesterday too. Create notes and links. Right. So this function note, create notes and links. So one thing we're doing here is we're creating persons, and then we can go down here, and now we can create a new function, and we'll say function link entities. All right, and I am thinking on the fly as I'm doing this. So I'm going to say, and this is where we now want to do this. We're going to be in project and we're going to say, each link. Okay, Mr. Anderson, you're going to have to help me with this. So each link X. So what we want to do is, so we're going to say for each link of the project. So if I look in here, so for each link to Michael Becker, I want to pull the companies into this. So for each link, I want entity to equal the organization of the linked note. Is that how I do it? I don't think that's going to work.
Well, if it's multiples, you want a plus equals because
But is that going to work? Let's see. So then what we can do is copy this, put that in our projects.
No, because you've given it no context. So in each loop,
right.
So you're going to want when you've got you either want to be working with information from the source or the target of the link.
So here's where I'm at. I'm at project A, and I want to pull the organization names from Michael Becker and Peter Wasilko into entities, or into the entity attribute. So I know how I would do that otherwise. I was just practicing for
No, you need right with the function. The function normally works on the note being worked on, but sometimes it's easier to just say to the function, basically, you pass it the note that it's working on, so that you can. I find it sometimes easy to be explicit. So instead of I give it the ID string or something of the thing I've called, which means that I can have more certainty as to when I say entity, which note I'm writing to or drawing from, because as you write it, it's not necessarily clear to you in your function.
Well, here I was just trying to experiment using the new. Here's how I used to do it, and I was trying to experiment. So for another way to do it would be entity equals links.outbound organization. So if I go up here, you'll see that what's happening is it's saying for every link that's outbound, pull that organizations from that notes into here. Now there's this other new each dot link thing that I've not yet I've not yet figured out or mastered how to use yet. So I'll figure that out. But so Peter, so there you go. So now I've got my project and I know who's involved with it and I know what companies are involved with it. And then invariably from that, you can then build tables and output and a whole bunch of different things.
Very nice. The only wrinkle is I don't think I'd want to pull all entities because I might be a part of some entities that have nothing to do with the project.
Well, remember, the only entities it's pulling in is the people that are associated with that project. So invariably, it's not pulling in all entities. It's only pulling in the entities from the people associated with that project.
Yeah, but people associated with that project might be associated with entities that have nothing to do with that project. Like I might be a member of the chess club that might have nothing to do with.
Well, then what you do is you'd not want to be linking to the person. You link to their role, right? If they have, that's why I created that role note concept. If they have 5 different roles, you link to the role that's associated with that project, not the person.
Okay, yeah, that clarifies it. That takes care of the problem.
That's why I invented that kind of role idea, right? Because invariably that role associated with that person is going to be part of that project.
Yes, that's it. Okay.
Right, but we don't have time right now to kind of go through the nuances of, sub roles and all of that. But that's how you would do that, and all the functions.
Okay, great, that clarifies everything. Now I know which way I'm going to go. Perfect.
Awesome. Anybody have any comments, questions, thoughts, ideas of what we just went through? Because that was a lot. Any reaction to what we went through, or you normally have something cogent to chime in on?
No, actually, I'm loving it. It's and also you've done this a few months ago, and this is such a great refresher as well. And I had also started doing stuff with creating a person's database, and find it so useful because all I have to do is, and again, just either use agents or drop folders, drop notes into the container containing that particular person, and it just rapidly builds up into an active resource.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's 500 people I've built up over the last 3 months. Yeah, Mark.
Just to say, you were asking about each link. I mean, as I think on it, you're better off using links. It's much more succinct. It actually gives you what you want in pretty much one line of code. Because otherwise, you've got to iterate through each link.
Yes.
To find out if it's the sort you want. Then you've got to find that, use the reference of that note to get, because effectively what's happening in links is just saying, find the path of anything that is outbound of the type that I want, or all types, and give me a particular attribute from it. And so actually doing that via each link is probably just more code to get to the same place. You can do it, but I don't think there's much need.
Okay. Yeah, so that's how I do CRM in Tinderbox. All right. Anybody else have any other? I feel we don't have any other comments or questions. I got something else cool I can show you. Actually,
Michael,
go ahead.
Michael, got a question.
Yes, go for it.
Could you hand over your CRM to someone else who doesn't have your 10,000 plus hours of skill in Tinderbox?
Yeah, I actually do it all the time. I mean, I'm doing it with Paul right now. We're incrementally adding the capabilities into his file, and I'm basically just saying, do this, and he's doing it, and it's working for him. And then he backward.
But I'm gonna classify Paul as a ringer like you are.
Not, but he wasn't a year ago.
Handing over to another expert does not count.
I could give you this file and you can start working with it right now, David, and not knowing anything of how the functions work. No, but what's going to happen though, and this is the trick, you're going to say, yeah, but I wish it did it this way, or yeah, I wish it did it that way. And that's the beauty of Tinderbox. That's the beauty of Tinderbox, is because you can do that and you can ask the community to help you. And the greatness of Mark Bernstein is that when it doesn't really do it the way I expect, he'll either show us how we can do it in the tool, or he'll say, that's a really good idea. Let me build that into the product. You're never going to
next release
the product. I'm sorry, David, you were saying?
He'll put it in the next release.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of Tinderbox. It's amazing, and if you're in the backstage, you get it like in a week or two. Whereas if you're in, public, you maybe get in the next public cycle. But it's pretty awesome. And I'll share this file at the end of the session, so we have it. But there's so much more nuance and complexity and things you can do along with that. That's pretty neat. Okay, so if no one has any other topic, I can show you something else really cool if you want to see it in our final 24 minutes. Anybody else have any other comments, thoughts, ideas, questions? All right, I am going to take silence as either I've beat you all into submission or yes.
Yes, that's my vote. You get my vote.
Cool, right?
Well, I'm sorry.
You're going to show something cool, right?
I am going to show you something really cool. So watch this. I'm gonna so I don't waste your time reinventing the wheel. I'm gonna go find it in my notes, and then I'll just build it up. Where'd it go? 2023. Okay. Marketing campaigns. So in this session, I've already shown you how I'm emailing my clients and how I'm emailing my partners, and we kind of slightly touched on this at the end of last week, but I think it's pretty darn neat. So let's go down here, and I'm going to create a post. Okay, and post is where's the little airplane? There you go. So for me, post is like a message flying out there in the world. And on post, some of the core things I need are term for terminology, entity, and let's say person. Okay. Okay, so, and I need to create the term. Now, some people might use other terminology. They might say keyword, they might say hashtag, they might say, I don't know, whatever language works for you. The terminology, the things that I've keyed on for me is term for term, person, entity, and we've already gone through those other ones. So let's say I'm writing and I'll just copy one so you can see it. Let's say I am writing automatically that. Okay. So essentially what I've said is, at Dixon Sue is a pioneer, a founder lead behind Personium at Fujitsu. Really cool project. Here's what he's doing on concepts. And, we've got this really great event coming up. How awesome is it going to be? And I could just turn around and that becomes the social media post that I'm now going to turn around and populate into my system. And let me pull up this tool right here for you really quick. Let me log into this tool just a second.
What's your naming convention for templates?
T, and then I'll show you in just a second. Okay, cool. Now I'm logged in. All right, so now I've got this social media tool I called Hootsuite, and so I'm going to demonstrate a whole bunch of different little pieces now. So I've got another template. I'm glad you brought that up, Peter. Let me go pull that template up real quick so we don't need to recreate it. T posts. Right, and sometimes I break my own rules, but let's go here. So I've got a template I call T posts, and essentially what it's doing is it's saying, hey, Tinderbox, go grab, create a variable called hidden citation keys. Go to the function that grabs the hidden citation keys, and this is the cool thing that we're going to create in just a minute. And then what I wanted to say is, if the is hashtag is true, then I want you to iterate against those citation keys and then produce these results. So let me go ahead here then. So since I've got this variable is hashtag is true, let me add this to the T post.
Misspelling on include.
Where?
Go back to where? Go back.
Where do you see that?
You're not include hashtags.
Where are you looking? I'm sorry.
Fifth line.
Bar string hashtag include, no L, and missing an L in include hashtags.
Got it. All right. Well, that is okay. I'll probably have to fix that somewhere else. All right. So we'll get back to that. Actually, I should fix that somewhere else too. So let me grab this.
No, it's include hashtag.
No, hashtag.
Yep. I'm just
Picky.
It's all right. We're good. I'm gonna have to fix that in my other function then. All right. Got it. So let me fix that in my other file while we're at it. This is the beauty of incremental formalization. So I'm going to fix this in real time in my real file. T posts. Where's my T posts? Thank you for that. And this is what I've learned along the way too, is the beautiful thing about Tinderbox is once you find those errors, you can fix them really quickly. So what are we doing with this template? So to Peter's question, how do I name my templates? T post is the name, T, and then the name of the template I want. What am I asking this template to do? Essentially, I'm saying display your posts. And so I'm going to create another folder here called social media posts. And we'll say on add. And we're going to say prototype equals P post. Okay, So when we add a new note to this file, you'll see that I get the post. And then this is another little, you all know I like prefixes as well. So if we say if name equals untitled, all right, then name equals post hyphen space okay. So now if I do it, you'll see my note's going to have an automatic prefix there, so I can have a name. So I now know this is a post note and all that. For me, having those prefixes really, really helps. Okay, so what I'm now want to do, and then we want to go here and we're going to assign the prototype or the template T posts to those prototypes. So now if I look at this note, you can see it's going to go through and let me display my notes. So now you'll see here it's saying V hashtag. Well, why am I getting V hashtag? I'm getting V hashtag because I've not defined that variable and I've not created the function for it. So now let's go create our V hashtag function and watch what's going to happen here. So we'll go up to hints and we'll create this function called V hashtag, include hashtags, and we'll say function. And let's play a little Julia Child cooking show here if we can. So I'll just copy and paste that.
What is it you have against L's?
Dyslexia probably.
Yeah, so it's called function include again.
No, it's just I was copy and paste. There we go. Fix that here.
Thank you.
Good, appreciate it. All right, so we're going to create this function. All right, so that's the function we're creating. And if you see here, what does this mean? So what this means is when this function gets triggered, we want the note to be passing. And since we're only doing 3 of these, we don't need these. We want the note passing. So let's talk about what I want to have. Let's take a step back and what I want to have here is now let's say this note is related to Dixon Sue. Okay, now here's another beautiful thing about what we've just done here, doing it all in one note. You see how I have this create no function we did earlier. If I go to my post attributes, type that in the rule, because now that I have Dixon Sue in that note, you'll now see Dixon Sue automatically got created. So we're leveraging the same function of create people across different note concepts. Now I've got the same concept of create a person if they're part of a project, create a person if they're part of a note. So if you go up here on this project too, let me say Dixon Sue. Oh, spelled his name wrong. One of these days I'll get this dyslexia thing handled. Right. So if we go like that. So now what I can see here is Dixon is both part of a social media post and part of a project. So again, all the CRM, you start seeing more thoughts and ideas of how this does. And we'll say this is Dixon quote post. And again, if you go back here now, you'll see now it says Dixon quote post instead of just that blah, blah, blah that I had earlier. And now what I want to do here, and just so you understand what I'm trying to accomplish here, is I've written this really cool note. And at least I think it's cool. And what this note is about is Jitsu. And by the way, we haven't done it with this file, but we could do the exact same methods, or we can just do it quickly here. So we said this one was about creating, this function was about creating people. Now let's create a new one. And this one's about create entity. Entities folder, blah, blah, blah. And the attribute we want to be passing is for each entity. Okay. So now if I put this one in the posts, we'll go over here like that. Okay, and you'll see that Tinderbox, I don't know if you caught it, you probably didn't catch it, but Tinderbox immediately created a note called Fujitsu. Why did it do that? Because I put Fujitsu here. So I'm actually using Tinderbox to automatically create my company names, my people names. That's all part of the CRM-esque part of the process. Now, here's the other thing I wanted to show you. And we can do the same thing while we're at it. Just so we can have completeness in the demo. And again, another cool thing about Senor Tinderbox or Senorita Tinderbox, depending on how you want this to go. Say terms. And now this is coming up. Now this is coming off the term folder. And like we just did before, I now can go quickly here, go to posts, and now add that function in. And you'll see here, I go, now what terms are is this note related to? It's related to PIMS, it's related to privacy, it's related to personal data, and the list goes on. But let's just stick with 3 right now. Because I did that, Tinderbox automatically, and because it wasn't there before, it automatically created a terms folder for me. It has now produced those terms. So again, now we're having Tinderbox automatically build up our asset repository and asset file. But what I wanted to show you and what's so cool about templating is now let's go back to our include hashtag function here. Because if you think about it, if you really want to make a successful social media post, it's not just throwing content out there, it's also adding the hashtags to the social media post and any anchor mentions. So let me show you how that works. So we're going to go here and we're going to say, hey, Tinderbox, I want you to create a variable string called the hashtag. Okay. And now what I want, and what we want to do here is I term, I entity, I person. So we're going to grab can we just grab this whole thing here? And we're going to go back to our post prototype. And you'll see this happening on the fly. We're now going to add this in, but what we're going to do is we're going to say, I want you to pass me the values of these attributes. So every time this function runs, what I'm asking Tinderbox to do is pass the values of term, entity, and person to the function. The function in turn is now going to take those in as inputs. So the values coming from the note and coming into the function as an input term, input entity, input I person. And then using our, because you guys don't need to see me do typos again, I'm just going to copy and paste it. I guess we don't need inputs, but so let's take a look at what I'm asking Tinderbox to do here. So what I'm saying is, what I want you to do is, actually, you know what? I don't need to do this. I got ahead of myself. I don't need to do that because I'm actually not running it as a rule on the note. I'm running it as a action in the template. So when the template triggers, I'm saying, Tinderbox, when you trigger this template, when you try to resolve this template, pass these values to the note. And what am I asking the function to do? I'm saying go through each of the terms and replace them with a hashtag and remove any spaces or any hyphens in the word. What I want you to do is for entities, put an @ sign in front of it and put an @ sign in front of people, because that's how you do mentions in social media posts. So now if I do that, if this worked, we'll go down here. You'll see there's nothing down here at the bottom of the page right now. But when I now go render the template, darn it. What did I do wrong? It was working on my side. I know what I did wrong. Okay, so, and I'm sure Mr. Anderson's already got the guess, but let's see. So I've asked Tinderbox.
Have you put a return statement in there?
I didn't, exactly. Exactly. So I asked Tinderbox to do all this work, well, then what happens, right? So I need to tell Tinderbox, I want you to return your work to the value hashtag, the hashtag. And if I go to the post, you'll see I'm telling the template to say, make the string v hashtag equal to whatever the function returns, right? So now if I go back and do it, and it didn't work, darn it. And this could be because of my typos. Let's fix it. V hashtag, templates. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It looks more like it's in the template because the template is writing the literal name of the variable, which normally means it didn't get anything.
Right. So variable string equals v hashtag. VF include hashtags.
Do we want value instead of action at the end?
No, let's just make sure I got the right spelling. Right. I can show you it working on my side so you know it works, but we've got 6 minutes to figure it out. Okay, so what this is saying is the template's not getting the it's not getting the value for B hashtags. So as Mark said, so let's debug that really quick. So F include equals this. I've got V hashtag equals that. I'm asking it to incrementally, and so it's not getting the values.
Well, the last line of the template was action v hashtag, not value v hashtag.
Where's that?
Take a look. If you go back to the post template, yeah, see down there it's action.
Oh, no, but that's erase. That's I actually don't need that. That's erasing the value of hashtag. That's
so the line code 4 from the bottom, value v hashtag, is the thing that's misfiring because v hashtag is not being populated.
Right.
Have you got a scoping issue with your variable?
Perhaps. So let's just test this.
Should be.
Quick.
Did it want a $sign maybe?
Yeah, it's just hashtag equals hello. Yes. So let's just make sure that that works. And so now you're getting some real-time debugging. So, okay, so that's the problem. So I'm not even passing this. So V hashtag. Oh, and that's, I know what's happening. In the template, I've not actually declared the variable V hashtag.
Yes, you have.
Well, you have inside the if.
Yeah, I have. Oh, no. Okay, got it. No. Look what I did wrong. All is right in this world. I'm a moron. Is yes.
Is it your Boolean?
Is yes equals include hashtag. It's not yes. Yes.
Oh.
There you go. So now, because sometimes I want it, sometimes I don't. Sorry, guys. I missed that. So you see it automatically generated my hashtag and mention cloud for me. So now all I need to do is copy this, go over to my fancy dancy social media tool. Where'd it go? Where did Hootsuite go? Let me open it up again. We'll go to Hootsuite.
Tell us about Hootsuite.
Hootsuite is a ability to schedule and manage social media intelligence. So if I go here to my planner and let's say I wanted to, you'll see it at 11:20 this morning. This social media post is going to automatically go out for me. So let's say we wanted to post this Dixon post that we're doing right now. I could click post, click this, paste in my text, and you'll see I've now automatically got my hashtag cloud done. And if I click on this, I can tell it what social media account I wanted to go from. And now I go like this, and I say Fujitsu, which I spelled wrong. and you'll see it automatically pops up the company Fujitsu. I click it, and then I can go through every single mention for companies. And then when that posts, it will automatically tag those people in the social media post. So this is a way that I've figured out how to automate this hashtag cloud. And you'll notice here it says personals, and it removed the space out of data. So I can automatically create my hashtag cloud, but at the same time, I'm creating my knowledge base of linking this note to all of these different terms and to that company and to that person. So I don't know. I think it's wickedly cool.
Quick one, Michael, just a practical thing is if you just go back to your template a second, the one where you had the problem that it wasn't, it was sort of giving you,
Well,
if you move that, if you had declared v hashtag outside the if, it would be declared as an empty string. So when you called it, and with the wrong setting, you wouldn't get anything. Right. Yeah, and then inside you just say v hashtag equals. So now, if you have the wrong setting, you won't get the kitty litter of the variable name turning up.
There's no variable
because it'll just be empty. It'll write an empty string, and all is fine. Yeah.
There's no variable there now, and if I go like that, there you go. So in our last 30 seconds, what do you guys think? Reactions? Art, Max, Tom?
Yeah, I'm trying to find my unmute. No, this is so great. And there's so many applications. There's a lot of possibilities that you can do with this, especially generating the hash clouds and stuff. Really, very cool. Very well done. Very comprehensive too.
Thank you.
Michael, I want to thank you for the setup on entities, the thorny issue of singular versus plural, and the sloppiness of imprecision of how humans use language.
You're most welcome. And by the way, in the last 30 seconds, you remember how I did this for posts? You're not going to crash on me right now, are you? All right. Yeah, and so you'll notice how Fujitsu didn't get the entity prefix. Well, I could have done an entity prefix just before then. So there's all of these other little things that you can do to make it yours. But
you're running on an M2, I assume.
Yeah. No, not M1. M1. I haven't dropped this one.
Come on, Michael, please.
I know. Okay. Yeah. So we'll
Michael?
Yes, sir.
I think what this demonstrates to me, at my 100-mile behind you phase of understanding Tinderbox, is I'm still focused on organizing my second brain in Tinderbox and building in the functionalities a bit at a time in Tinderbox. I think where you are and where I need to get to is getting things out in a useful way. And that's a whole nother world that probably is next. So I'm glad to see some of these examples.
Well, and again, if you go back to why do I call it the 5 C's of knowledge management? Collection, curation, creation, collaboration, and contribution. And contribution is your output. And if you think about it, everything I've been talking about for the last 3 years is that. How do you get it out? How do I get it out as efficiently as possible in a format that works for me that I can share it with others?
No.
And that's really been my driving force.
Michael, the principle is to collect it. I mean, think of that closing scene in the when the archives, it goes, the box is being wheeled into the impressive or the
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Thank you. Yes, that is. Forget getting it out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sarcasm.
Yeah. Yeah, and then now watch this too. Now, if I delete this Fujitsu note, it's going to automatically get so that's the fun part. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Any other final thoughts, questions, all of that? Let me know. But I'll post this file, and I hope you guys got value from it.
Oh, thanks so much, Michael. Can't thank you enough. That was just incredibly useful to me.
Yeah, my pleasure. That's what I'm here for. All right, guys. Thanks. Loved it. By the way, I am not going to be here next week or probably the week out. Well, next week I'm definitely not here because I'm traveling, and the week after I'll actually be at Mr. Anderson's house. So yeah, that will be fun. So maybe we Tinderbox from Mr. Anderson's house the following week. All right. Awesome. See you, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye. Have a great week.
Thank you.